Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching. The realization that she didn't have to go to work brought a happy smile to Juliana's face when she woke up. Stretching languidly, she opened her eyes and the smile immediately disappeared. Sighing sadly, she got out of bed and throwing on a robe, wandered into the kitchen. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty. Are you going to have breakfast?" Emmeline asked. Hummy Ann answered, sitting down at the table. For 5 years, the two sisters had shared the apartment their parents had left them when they moved out of town. They got along well, but Juliana wanted to live separately and was looking forward to getting her new place finished. "He left a couple of hours ago," Emmeline said, turning on the kettle. "I see," she said with a heavy sigh. "Honestly, I don't understand you. Why do you need it?" Julianne shrugged. They'd met Justin on the internet. He'd said he was looking for a relationship without commitment, which didn't suit a woman at all. Her 30th birthday was looming on the horizon, and she wanted to get married and have children. Why had she gone on a date with Justin? She liked him. She couldn't drink water off his face, but outwardly he was her ideal, and when the man smiled, she was simply speechless. So enchanted was she by his smile. It had been 2.5 months since they'd met on her property, and she knew absolutely nothing about him. Justin visited once, twice a week, bringing something delicious followed by an amazing night that she thought about until the next time they met. In the mornings, he would often disappear before she woke up, only to be awakened when Emmeline wasn't home for Julianne to close the door behind him. Unlike her sister's Lark, she liked to sleep longer. "How long has Austin been chasing you? And you keep turning your nose up at him," the sister went on. "First you were crying over Evan, and now this one. Regina, if a man says he needs it for health reasons, he's not going to do it. I like him. I don't like Austin. I'm not a racist, but it's just not my thing. I like Americans." Regina answered, rising from the table to pour tea. "Here they are Russians. 4 years for the nose. Neither here nor there, this at least honest, but what is the use?" Emmeline sighed. "They don't want to make any commitments. That's why I broke up with Ronald. When a man needs a woman, he won't go anywhere. Better no way than that." "I don't know what's best. It's not good alone either," Julianne said. "We've got to keep moving. And you sit around waiting for your hero, lover, to call you and make you happy with his visit. I'm going to Meryl's house tonight. She promised to introduce me to a friend of her husband's, so I'm not expecting anything." Julianne finished her tea and cake and glanced at her phone, which alerted her to an incoming message. Seeing who it was from, the woman rolled her eyes. "Let me guess," Emmeline laughed. "Austin's texting. Him. He's annoying. He's so annoying. I don't want to go to work because of him, and he's bothering me on the weekends." "What's he saying?" Emmeline asked, and her sister handed her the phone. When she read it, the woman smiled. "Well, you should go. A man calls you to a restaurant, unlike some people. Your Justin's never taken you anywhere but the bunkhouse. A movie once. Remember? Yeah, a lot. Maybe he's married. What's your answer to Austin?" "The usual, no. If you like him so much, you'd hook up with him yourself. I don't mind if you keep him away from me." "Oh, yeah. Let men chase me, not me chasing them. And you should eat less pie. You're already a tart." Emmeline looked at her sister. Yes, there were extra pounds, of course. Julianne knew it well. But she could not deny herself sweets and pastries. "I had to remind you of that." The woman rose from the table. "No offense. It's just that I'm worried about you. And I can see that you're into this Justin guy. I mean, he's pretty good looking, but looks aren't everything. I hope Meryl's husband's friend turns out to be okay, and things work out. What about you? You got a new romance in the works?" Julianne looked at her sister with a smile. "I'm 6 years younger than you, so I have plenty of time to spare." she answered, and looked at her watch. I'm going to get ready. Leslie and I are going shopping. When are you leaving? I'm going to lie around a while. I won't be gone for a while. Juliana came back into the room and plopped down on the bed. As soon as she closed her eyes, Justin's face and the images of the night before came into view, and goosebumps ran through her body. She'd enjoyed everything when she'd lived with Evan, but there hadn't been that kind of passion in their relationship to begin with. Evan, for 4 years, everything had been fine. They hadn't even fought. And Juliana had painted pictures in her imagination of their future happy family life. Until one day he suddenly stunned her with a conversation that turned everything upside down. Regina, we need to talk. He said that day, coming home from work. Looking into his eyes, she realized it all at once. Just yesterday he hadn't looked that way, and suddenly in one day something had changed. It did not fit in her head, because there was nothing that could lead to thoughts of breaking up the relationship. We should break up. Without beating around the bush, he said, averting his gaze as if ashamed and guilty. Why all of a sudden? Juliana sat down across from him, and everything inside felt cold, and his heart froze. It was like this. He looked at her again. It's not easy for me, and I don't want to talk about it. It's just the way it is, that's all. It's not your fault. It's all me. Well, if you say so, it's necessary. She said, I'll go pack my things. The woman got up from the chair, barely restraining herself from crying. You can tomorrow, not at night, he said, and the sympathy in his gaze hurt even more. Better now. Juliana forced a smile out of herself and went to her room. How she'd sobbed when she got home. And then the lingering depression that Emmeline had worked long and hard to bring her out of. And what was most agonizing was that she had absolutely no idea why. 4 years of a relationship, happy and, as she thought, cloudless, suddenly shattered in a matter of minutes. Why? This question still sometimes rolled around in her mind, because it's always easier when you know the truth, no matter what it is, and the unknown is deprived of peace. It had been a year already, and the memories of that relationship didn't hurt anymore. Juliana had no desire to go to Meryl's house, and she hadn't even seen a picture of Willie. She hadn't even seen a picture of this William they wanted to introduce her to, but she intuitively felt that nothing would work out with him. This was far from her first introduction through friends, and nothing had ever stuck with anyone yet. Juliana stepped outside, and almost immediately her shuttle bus pulled up. She sat down and stared out the window, deep in her thoughts. Girl, what are you thinking about so seriously? Smile. She heard a voice nearby and turned her head. Next to her sat a man about her age. Without answering him, she looked out the window again. How angry you are. He spoke again. I'm the kind one. Juliana replied somewhat irritably. Would you like to leave a phone number? I'll ask you out sometime. The man smiled, and Juliana noticed he was missing one tooth. She didn't like him at all. He had a bald spot on his head, and he was kind of puny and small. Not worth it, she said. Permission to pass? I'm going out. The man stood up, and Juliana headed for the exit, thinking that looks definitely mattered. He might be a good man, but his appearance was so repulsive that there was no desire to find out what kind of person he was. Barely crossing the threshold of her friend's apartment, Juliana heard men's voices coming from the kitchen. Hi, come in, Meryl said, giving her friend a smile. Hi, how's he doing? Juliana asked in a whisper. You'll see. Get undressed and let's go. Feeling a little anxious, Juliana followed Elena into the kitchen. Oh, Regina, hi, said her friend's husband. Meet. William, this is Juliana. Nice to meet you, said the man, smiling broadly and looking at the woman with an undisguised, appraising gaze. Likewise. she replied, thinking that he was quite ordinary. On the street she would have passed by and not noticed. Everyone sat down at the table set in the kitchen, and Alex Merrill's husband poured alcohol. Wine for the ladies, vodka for himself and his buddy. The party lasted for several hours, and afterwards William volunteered to walk the new acquaintance home. "What are your plans for tomorrow?" he asked as they stood outside Julianne's front door. "I don't know yet," she replied, hoping that Justin would visit her on March 8th. "Maybe we could meet tomorrow. We'll get to know each other," he said with a smile. "Where should we go?" she asked, thinking that Justin, if he showed up, it would be closer tonight, and during the day she could meet William. A cafe, a movie, a walk. "So, we could." She said yes. "Let me write down your number then." The man took out his phone and Julianne dictated her number. "Let's do it tomorrow at 3, she said. "I was thinking closer to tonight. But 3 o'clock is 3 o'clock. I'll see you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." She said goodbye to her new acquaintance and hurried home. Emmeline was already home. She was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee. "How's the potential fiancé?" she asked her sister as soon as she entered the apartment. So, she said, "Not a hit. That's because you're fixated on Justine," she quoted her. "Justin had nothing to do with it, and I'm going out with this William guy tomorrow." "That's a good point," Emmeline said approvingly. Without opening her eyes, Julianne fumbled for the phone, which was ringing frantically on the nightstand next to the bed. "Hello," she said in a sleepy voice. "Regina, I'm at your house." "Happy holidays. Tell me your apartment number and I'll come up." A man's voice answered, and Julianne opened her eyes and sighed heavily. "Austin, thank you for congratulating me, but no apartment numbers. Just leave me alone," she said, not hiding her annoyance. "At least come downstairs." Julianne got out of bed and went to the window. Austin was standing at the front door with a large bouquet of white roses. She didn't feel like going downstairs to see him, and she didn't want flowers from a man she didn't like. "Okay," she said, and after dropping the call, she began to get dressed. As soon as Julianne stepped outside, Austin immediately handed her a bouquet, which she reluctantly took. "Happy holidays. Let's go to a cafe and have some good wine," he said, not wanting to back down. "Thanks for the flowers, but you shouldn't have. Austin, I've told you 100 times that nothing will happen between us, and I don't want to go anywhere with you." It was a little harsh, but this intrusive beau and work colleague was already boring Julianne. "Why are you being so stubborn? I'm not going to eat you," he answered, but not smiling. "I don't want to." The woman handed him the flowers and got ready to leave. "Take the flowers. It's from the heart." He handed the bouquet back to her, and Julianne immediately dashed out the front door. Wow, it's beautiful," Emmeline said, looking at the bouquet her sister had returned with. "I wish someone would give me one of those." "Take it," said her sister. "No, you got one." She blew him off again. "I feel sorry for him. Your phone was beeping, by the way." Putting the bouquet on the table, Julianne went to her room and picked up her phone and started reading messages from coworkers and William. "What's up?" "I ran to read faster, and Justin didn't even bother to send a text message," said her sister, looking into her room. "Don't make it up," she replied. Though actually her sister was right. She was expecting a message from Justin. What a gorgeous bouquet. Emmeline put the bouquet she'd given her sister in a vase. "I don't think you'll be getting one of these tonight." "I don't care. It doesn't make me happy," Julianne replied dryly, and then looked at her phone, which was alerting her to a new message. It was from Justin. "It was from Justin, wasn't it?" Emmeline asked, seeing the change in her sister's face. "Yes," Julianne replied, reading Happy Holidays. "Verbose." The sister shook her head. "Would you stop it already?" Regina mumbled, and immediately her phone rang, but the number wasn't from her address book. "Hello. Hi. Happy holidays." A familiar male voice sounded, and Juliana immediately plopped down on the divan, pale and mouth open in amazement. "Hello. Regina, can you hear me?" "Hey, Evan. I can hear you." Sitting down next to her sister, Emmeline covered her mouth with her palm and widened her eyes in amazement. "How are you? How are you?" he asked. "I'm fine," Juliana replied, trying to come to her senses. The last thing she expected to hear was an ex. "You're not married?" "Not yet. Why don't we get together?" Regina was silent again, trying to come to her senses. "Oh, hello. Yeah, I can hear you." "Why do we need to meet?" she asked, trying to figure out if she wanted to see Evan. "I've been thinking about you a lot. I'd like to see you. Just sit somewhere and talk." "I'm busy today," Juliana replied. "Maybe you can make time?" "I don't know." "I don't think so." She felt resentful again at the man who had cut her off so abruptly. "How about tomorrow then?" he asked. "We'll see. Thanks for the congratulations, but I'm busy, so I can't talk much," Juliana said in an indifferent tone. "Okay, I'll call you later. Bye." "Wow," Emmeline said in amazement when Juliana ended the conversation. "I'm shocked," she replied, looking at her sister. "It's almost a year later. She's going to make a move, I'm sure. I hope you don't fall for it. In the same puddle with the same slippers." "Nah. I'm curious to meet you, though." She admitted it. "He probably had an affair with someone else. Realized it was better with you, and decided you'd been waiting all year for him to come back. Shouldn't you be getting ready to meet William?" Julianne looked at her watch. "I do. Aren't you going out?" Tonight. I'm taking the girls to a coffee shop. Join us if you're free. It's a nice place to dance and play pool." "Maybe," Julianne said. William was waiting outside the movie theater, twirling a single rose in his hands. "Happy holidays," he said, holding it out to Julianne, who approached him. "Thank you," she replied, taking the flower. After watching the comedy as planned, William suggested a walk in the park nearby. "Can we go to your place?" he asked after half an hour of walking. "I'm freezing." "You're not?" Julianne was a little taken aback. "I thought we were talking about the cafe," she answered. She didn't like the way things were going. "Honestly, I don't feel like it. I'd rather order sushi, for example, and sit at home." "But you're so tense," he smiled. "We're grown-ups, so what's the point in stalling? If you don't like me, then why did you agree to meet me? Then why did you agree to meet me? Isn't it fast?" "And why me?" Julianne asked, stopping. "You could come to my place, of course, but I'm renting a room. It's next door. It's not very nice. I don't live alone either. I live with my sister. And we're not going to anyone's place." Julianne turned in the opposite direction. "I'm cold too. Let's go to the bus stop." "Julianne, are you suggesting we go out for a month like teenagers and go to the movies?" "I'm not suggesting anything," she replied dryly. "But I can't do that. So you don't like me. Shall we go home then?" he asked. "Let's go home." Julianne was glad that the shuttle bus came quickly. The holiday mood had been ruined. First the annoying Austin, now this cocky guy, she thought. Better to hang out with her sister, get some female company, she decided. When she got off the bus, she threw the rose William had given her into the nearest trash can, because it didn't look like much, and she didn't need it from that man. The phone rang when Julianne was near the house. "Hello," she answered the phone. "Hello again. I'm right outside your house." "Why don't we meet up?" Evan asked. And the woman chuckled nervously, thinking about what a day it was. "Evan, why do we have to meet?" she asked. "I really want to see you. Can I come over?" Julianne had only one question, why he'd left her after 4 years, and she wanted an answer, even if it was late. "All right." "Huh. Come on in," she said. Emmeline wasn't home. Julianne changed her clothes and warmed up dinner. She was terribly hungry. She had barely finished her soup when the doorbell rang and she opened it to see Evan. Even though her feelings for the man were gone, she was still excited and tense. "This is for you." Evan handed her the lily and the cake. You shouldn't have, but thank you, she replied. Come into the kitchen, she said, going in herself. Evan sat down on a stool and Juliana put the flour in a vase and turned on the kettle. You look good, said Evan, smiling and not taking his eyes off the woman. You haven't changed either. We haven't seen each other for almost a year. Why did you suddenly think of me today? She asked, sitting down across from me. I often thought of you, he answered. Then why did you leave me? We were doing well. Looking into his eyes, Juliana asked, Didn't you understand? He sighed heavily. I cheated on you then. I met my first love by chance and it hit me. She and I broke up a couple months ago. I see, Juliana grinned, and I felt even worse than I had before. So what do you want from me now? She asked dismissively. Why don't we try a fresh start? I was confused then, and then I realized that I didn't love her anymore, but I loved you, Evan said sadly, and there was something pleading for forgiveness in his gaze. That's interesting. Even, I was sick of you. I've been hurt and sick for a long time. You can't fix a broken cup. If you want, we can get married. We were good together and we'll be good together again. He got up from his seat and squatted down next to Juliana. Forgive me, you fool, he whispered, taking her hands in his. Suddenly she realized that she was ready to say yes to him. Memories of their life together came flooding back, and he seemed so sincere. But on the other hand, Evan hadn't thought about her all this time, just like when he cheated on her with his first love. I mean, would he do that if he loved her? No, betrayal is unforgivable. She doesn't love him anymore, and she doesn't need a man like that. Juliana released her hands and got up from the stool. Evan, when you love someone, you don't do that. There's no turning back. As soon as she said those words, she was in Evan's arms, and his lips were instantly on hers in a kiss. Juliana pushed Evan away from her. Are you out of your mind? She asked harshly, stepping a few steps away from him. You think it's that easy? Go away. Regina, I understand. He took a step toward her, but she put her hand out in front of her, letting him know not to come any closer. He couldn't resist. Let's try it again. I'm not ready for such experiments, knowing in absentia that nothing will work. She stared at the man, marveling at how easy he had it, and how many tears she'd shed, how she'd lived all this time. None of that mattered to him. This time the first love met, then maybe the second will appear, or a new temptation. She didn't want to go through it all again, and so with his appearance he triggered past memories, and past feelings were also remembered, but also pain and resentment, disappointment. Evan, go away and don't come back, she said calmly, sighing. The man looked at his former lover and went out into the corridor. Everyone has the right to make a mistake and repent. You are too categorical. I'm leaving. I hope you think about everything and give me a second chance, he said, tying the laces of his shoes. Don't get your hopes up. Whoever betrayed you once will betray you again, and I don't have any love for you, she answered sharply. Was there? Evan grinned sadly. I did, and it was very painful and bad. Juliana admitted honestly. I want to make it up to you, he said wistfully, trying to take her hand, but Juliana wouldn't let him. Not everything can be fixed. She opened the front door and Evan left the apartment with a sad look at Juliana. The woman returned to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine. What kind of day is this? She asked herself. Are there any normal men in this world? After drinking the wine, Juliana looked at her watch. She didn't feel like going out, so she decided that she wouldn't go to her sister's cafe, but would rather watch some positive love movie at home. How angry she was at Evan for stirring up all those feelings that had been forgotten over time. When the phone rang, she flinched in surprise. Well, are you coming? Emmeline asked, and in the background music and a woman's tinkling laughter could be heard. No, I don't feel like going anywhere, she said. Why so sad? How'd it go with William? It didn't. He asked me to go home and continue the banquet. I also had time to talk to Evan. He suddenly wants to go back to living with another woman. I have a beautiful March 8th, Juliana said sarcastically. Yeah, all the more reason to join us. We'll sit in a purely sorority dance. I don't need them, these men. I don't want to ruin the holiday for them. Come on over. You're probably right. I'm just so angry. After hanging up, Juliana opened her closet. She chose a classic black dress and began to make up. When she was ready, her phone rang again. This time it was Justin calling, which the woman hadn't expected after his message. Happy holidays. Hi. What are you doing? He asked. You're the only thing I need to be happy about today, she thought, getting even angrier at the male population of the planet. When she heard his voice, she suppressed the joy from his call, which tried to seep through the resentment and anger. I'm leaving, she answered briefly. I thought I'd see you tonight, he said, and from his tone it was clear that the man was surprised to hear such an answer. It's a holiday. I'm sitting here waiting for you, Juliana thought, and the resentment in her soul was only growing. I have other plans. She answered a little harshly. Are you mad at me? He asked. Juliana exhaled. There was nothing to be angry about because Justin had been honest and hadn't promised anything he didn't intend to do. Not angry, Juliana replied, calming down a little. It's just that there are plans. So not tonight. Maybe later, when you're free? I have a free day tomorrow. We could spend it together, Justin said. Oh, I don't know. I have to go, she said, though her desire to stay was overriding her common sense. If you want to see me, call me. You don't seem to be in a good mood today. Happy holidays again. Thank you. When she finished talking, Juliana sat down. She wanted to cry. Why did everything have to be like this? She wanted to meet Justin, but this man wasn't the one for her, even though she had feelings for him that she couldn't deny. She picked up her phone and hailed cab. Finally, Emmeline said when she saw her sister. We're already celebrating. The woman sat down at the table where, besides her sister, two of her friends were sitting. All the women were already well into the party. Why are you so sour? Asked one of them. Yes, had time to spoil the mood, men, Juliana answered, taking the menu in her hand. They are not worth to be sad about them, and even less to be killed, replied the other. Mine, when he went to his Caroline, I sighed with relief that now I don't have to put up with that asshole. There are few normal people, so we settle for all sorts of nonsense. What do we need? No. The woman drank a glass of vodka and wrinkled her nose. I want normal human relations, love, care. And there are people around. Juliana sighed and poured herself a shot of vodka from the decanter. Austin was chasing after her. And what a bouquet he gave her this morning, said Emmeline. So we turn our noses up at him. We want a Russian. I can understand that. I like the European type of men too, said one of Emmeline's friends. And we, Russian women, cannot accept and understand other faith. Juliana doesn't need that Austin. Anyway, to you and me, and to them. The second friend of her sister made a toast, raising a glass of vodka, and all the women followed her example. Juliana couldn't remember the last time she danced like that. Having drunk a little alcohol, she felt that her mood had improved, and her soul wanted a holiday. Let this holiday be without men, though not quite without men. After all, she had already met Ronald, and the other girls were not without attention from men. It was already 3 o'clock in the morning, and she was doing another slow dance with a new acquaintance. Let's get out of here, he said in her ear in a promising tone. Where to? Juliana wasn't sober, of course, but her brain wasn't so out of whack that she could go anywhere with Ronald. My place, he said, And Juliana suddenly stopped dancing and, freeing herself from his hands that were clutching her during the dance, laughed heartily. Ronald looked at the woman with bewilderment. "Apparently a strong overdose of alcohol," quoted the man. "Nope." Continuing to laugh, Juliana replied, "It's such a fun day today." They're all the same, Juliana thought. It's like a cornucopia of fun today. She'd never had a day like this before. Juliana returned to the table, still laughing. "What's the matter with you?" her sister asked. "Are you laughing or crying?" Juliana took a mirror out of her purse and started wiping off her mascara. "I'm laughing," she answered her sister. "Ronald just invited me to his place for a ride. Paul asked me out tomorrow. Emmeline's got a date too. I'm going straight to bed. That's the fourth one of the day." Juliana laughed again. "Austin didn't call. Emmeline said, if you mention him again, I'll bite you." "I won't. I'm sorry. We should get to the house." Emmeline yawned and looked at her watch. "Couldn't your Paul drive us?" Juliana asked her sister. "He'd take a cab himself, but he lives in a different neighborhood," she answered. "We'll call a cab." Juliana remembered that Justin had told her to call him when she was free and wanted to see him. And so she did. "Hello?" A sleepy voice answered. "Still want to get together?" she asked. "What time is it?" Justin yawned and opened his eyes. "Fourth hour of the night or morning," Juliana answered immediately. "Where are you?" he asked, hearing music and women's voices. "With the girls in the cafe. We were celebrating our holiday. Should I come? Can you pick me and Emmeline up from the cafe?" "I can." "Give me the address." He yawned again and got out of bed. Juliana was surprised. She hadn't expected Justin to agree to come pick her up in the middle of the night. "Well?" Emmeline asked her sister. "Justin will pick us up," Juliana replied, taking another shot of vodka. "Wow. I'm actually surprised he showed up today." "Me too. There's got to be something else to do besides just show up at night," Emmeline remarked. "If you ask me, you should have called a cab and told Justin to fuck off. He's no different from William and Evan." "Tomorrow," Juliana said, munching on a pickle. "Tomorrow what?" Emmeline asked. "Tomorrow I'll send it. I don't want this kind of relationship anymore. I'd rather suffer for a month, but I can't go on like this." "I can hardly believe it. I like him a lot even more. Today I was convinced of that. But I don't want love without commitment. Falling in love with a man just because he's good in bed is stupid. You don't know anything about him. He came and went, and that's love. Once in a movie, that doesn't count. Actually, we still talk and we always cuddle. I don't know how to explain it, but it's warm when he's around, nice, calm, cozy." Paul came up to them and took Emmeline to slow dance. "Drink." One of her sister's friends came to the table and poured vodka into her and Juliana's glasses. She said, drinking it down, immediately washing it down with tomato juice. Juliana almost listened to the phone ring. "Well, I'm here. Come on out," said Justin. And she immediately looked for her sister with her eyes. 5 minutes, she answered, heading towards her dancing sister. "The carriage is here. It's time." "Really?" It hadn't even been a year. Emmeline said goodbye to her beau and took her things and followed her sister out the door. Justin got out of the car. A smile played on his face when he saw Juliana and Emmeline swaying. "I can see well," he said, opening the front and then the back doors of the car. "Great," Emmeline replied, flopping into the back seat. "Great," Juliana said, sitting down in the front seat. She wasn't drunk, but her eyes were foggy, and she felt a little dizzy. "Oh, flowers," said Emmeline, seeing the 2 bouquets next to her. "Don't crush them," Justin said. And Juliana looked back. On the back seat were 2 very beautiful bouquets, assembled from different flowers. Turning her head back, she looked at Justin. "One for you and one for Emmeline," he said, as if reading her mind. "Why would he do that?" Juliana asked snidely. "That's an odd question. It's a holiday," he answered. Juliana looked at the flowers again. It was so unexpected that the woman fell into a stupor. She wondered if Justin had feelings for her too. After all, he'd come for her as soon as she'd asked him to. She'd never asked for anything before. If he didn't care about her, would he buy her flowers? Juliana put the bouquet in a vase. "Can I buy you tea?" Justin asked, sitting down on a stool by the kitchen table. Juliana silently turned on the kettle and sat down opposite the man, while Emmeline looked in the fridge. "Oh, cake. Where from?" She looked at her sister and pulled out the cake. "Evan brought it," she said. "It's good for something. I feel like having tea with something sweet and savory." Emmeline put the cake on the table and went to get tea glasses and plates and spoons, taking a vase for her bouquet. "Evan," Justin looked at Juliana. "Your mascara's smeared, by the way. Were you crying?" "No, not at all. I was laughing. I've had the kind of day that makes you laugh," she said, grinning. "Justin, this is so nice and so unexpected. Thanks again for the flowers," Emmeline said as she filled a vase with water and placed her bouquet in it. The man smiled. "So who's Evan?" he asked again. Juliana waved her hand. "My ex. Came to make up," she answered casually. "Was it successful?" Justin asked. "No." Juliana took a knife and handed it to Justin. "Cut the cake, please," she said. The kettle boiled and Emmeline began to pour the boiling water into glasses. "Sachets are on the table," she said, looking at Justin. There was silence for a while, and then taking a bite of cake, Emmeline broke the silence. "Mama, very much so," she said, closing her eyes in pleasure. "I don't even want to eat it because Evan brought it." Juliana looked at the piece of cake with obvious disdain. "It's not the cake's fault, Evan bought it." Emmeline took another bite. Justin smiled as he listened to the sisters' conversation. "Really, really delicious cake," he said, and Juliana immediately took a bite and put it in her mouth, admitting that Justin and Emmeline were right. It was really good. Finishing her tea and finishing her piece of cake, Emmeline yawned. "I'm going to bed. Don't make too much noise," she said, and left the kitchen. Juliana glared at Justin. "I didn't realize the format of our relationship meant holiday gifts," she said. "Are there any rules about that?" he asked. "No." The woman got up from her stool. "I'm going to take a bath," she said, and headed for the tub. Wrapped in a towel, Juliana came out of the bathroom. Justin was still in the kitchen looking at his phone. "I'm going to bed," she told him, and followed him to her room. Justin put his phone in his pocket and followed. "You're obviously not in the mood tonight," he said, and hugged Juliana. "I was today and yesterday." She released herself from his embrace and threw off her robe and began to put on her pajamas. The man left the room and returned a minute later, holding the bag he left in the hallway. "Maybe this will cheer you up a little," he said, holding it out to Juliana. She took it silently and looked inside. There was a big, beautiful box. "What's this?" she asked, pulling box out, looking at Justin in bewilderment. "A modest holiday present," he replied. Juliana sat down on the bed and opened the box. It was a bath kit containing salts, balms, body scrub, shower gel, handmade soap, and a few other jars and bottles she decided to study later. "Thank you," she said a little absent-mindedly. This was all too sudden. "How about a kiss? You're colder than an iceberg today," he said. Juliana got up from the bed and walked over to him. Placing her hands on his chest, she touched her lips to his, and her mood began to change for the better. Justin quickly freed her from her pajamas and laid her on the bed, and Juliana, despite her recent desire to end their relationship, completely forgot about that desire, unable to deny herself what she wanted. When she opened her eyes in the morning, she saw that Justin wasn't there. But she didn't have time to be upset when she heard voices in the kitchen. She put on her pajamas and, yawning, went in there. "Good morning, country," said Emmeline. Her sister and Justin were talking animatedly, drinking tea with pizza and yesterday's cake. "Good morning, or rather day," Justin said. Juliana looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. "Do you want pizza?" "I will," she answered, sitting down next to Justin. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Not really." Juliana yawned again. "You two stay here, and I'm gonna go lie down some more." Emmeline got up from her seat and walked out of the kitchen. "What were you talking about?" Juliana asked Justin. "Just about nothing," he answered, eating another slice of pizza. After eating, Juliana went back into the room and lay down on the bed. "Are you planning on lying around all day?" Justin asked her. "I'm so tired, that's the limit of my dreams right now," she answered and smiled. "Me too. Do you mind if I keep you company?" he asked and lay down next to her. "I don't mind." Juliana nestled against his chest, and he put one arm around her. She closed her eyes and sighed peacefully. She felt so good right now. She didn't want to talk about their relationship right now, but to enjoy the moment when Justin was near her, and she was cozy and warm in his arms. Waking up, Juliana was lost in time, whether it was work or still a day off. She looked at the clock. It was 8 o'clock in the evening. Recovering her memory of recent events, she sighed and leisurely got out of bed. Justin wasn't there, as usual, and her mood had taken a sharp turn for the worse. Her head was a little sore and she was thirsty. Juliana wandered into the kitchen. Justin was sitting at the table, sipping coffee. "How are you feeling? Did you sleep well?" he asked. "I think so now. I'm thirsty." She poured a full glass of water and emptied it. Just then the doorbell rang and the woman almost jumped in surprise. "I'll get it," Justin said. "It's a delivery." He walked out into the hallway, closing the kitchen door behind him. A couple minutes later, he came back with a package. "What's this?" Juliana looked at the package. "Ordered Chinese food? You want some?" "I will." "Is Emmeline still asleep?" Justin shrugged. "She wasn't in the kitchen when I woke up, and I didn't look in the room." Juliana walked out of the kitchen and went back in, making sure her sister wasn't home. She remembered that Paul from the cafe had asked her out yesterday, and she concluded that Emmeline had gone to meet him. "She's not at home," she said, taking a seat across from Justin. The man set a few boxes in front of her with Chinese noodles with chicken, eggplant in sweet and sour sauce, and steamed buns with caramel. "It's delicious." Thank you." "You're welcome," he replied and smiled. "Justin, what's next?" Juliana suddenly blurted out and looked at the man warily, waiting for an answer. "We can go for a walk or watch a movie," he answered, finishing his noodles. "I don't mean tonight." She squeezed it out of her. Justin put down his fork and looked at the woman. "Regina." "Not now," he said in a serious tone. "When? Please understand me. This is so hard for me. I know that you all said that I agreed, but I can't take it anymore." "And how do you want marriage?" he asked, staring at her unceasingly. "Yes, marriage. Children. I'm not asking you to propose to me, and I'm not going to give you any ultimatums. It's just, if you don't want a relationship that's anything other than come and go, we should break up." It was very hard, but Juliana couldn't go on as it was, wanting more. She wasn't ready to continue settling for less. Justin gloomed and thought for a moment. "I think I'll be going now." He rose from the table, and Juliana felt a lump forming inside her, and her heart stopped. She got up and followed him out into the hallway. There was silence. Once he was dressed, Justin looked at her, and she caught something akin to regret in his gaze. "Bye." It was all he said as he opened the door. "Bye." Juliana barely whispered. She slammed the door behind Justin and went to her room, falling onto her bed and crying herself to sleep. Emmeline got home around 11. The girl was in high spirits, and she was holding 3 scarlet roses. "Anybody home?" From the threshold she asked, and without waiting for an answer, knocked on her sister's room. "Come in," she answered. "Regina, What are you doing? The smile faded from her face when she saw her sister crying, lying on her back and staring at the ceiling. Justin and I broke up, she said, sniffling. Emmeline sat down on the bed. It seemed to me that your relationship was changing, she said, looking at her sister sympathetically. While you were asleep and we were chatting in the kitchen, he seemed to me quite a normal man, and the fact that he took us away, congratulated you. I thought he might have feelings for you after all. We talked. Apparently not, since he left, Juliana cried again. It's not you. It's men these days. He's gone and gone. You don't have to feel so bad about it. Emmeline, I think I'm falling in love with him already. I don't want it to end like this. Juliana looked at her sister, wiping away her tears. I don't want it to just end like that. This love without commitment is just torturing me. I told you a long time ago that you couldn't do that. And it was clear you had a soft spot for him, too. Emmeline sighed. Look, Paul has a friend who's been asking if I have an open girlfriend. Why don't the four of us go out next time? I don't want to do anything. Juliana mumbled. You're gonna have to back off a little bit then. I asked about this friend. Paul says he's a nice guy. He's 3 years younger than you, but that's nothing. Just younger too, right? Yeah, 1.5 years. I'll ask for a picture. If you don't like it, don't go. It's not like you're missing anything. I'll make a date for next weekend. Suit yourself. Juliana answered indifferently and turned on her side. She didn't feel like doing anything right now. Even today and last night she had felt happy for a while. But she was probably just wishful thinking, because if Justin had feelings for her, would he have left? No, of course not, her mind told her. The next day Juliana came home from work, blacker than a cloud, and Emmeline thought her sister was going to start throwing lightning bolts. Everything's mad, said Juliana, tossing the grocery bag on the floor carelessly. Like what? Emmeline picked up the bag and carried it into the kitchen. Austin. God, I'm so sick of him. I've got some bad news, too. Albert's being promoted, and we have a new department head starting Monday. We've just started working normally with an adequate man after the last idiot, and now we'll get assigned again. Well, don't get excited. Maybe this one will be normal, too. My gut says no. Juliana sat down on a stool. My gut can be wrong, too. I sent you a picture of Steve today, Paul's friend. What do you think of him? I think he's pretty cool. We're going to that cafe we went to on Saturday. Don't say no. I won't. To be honest, I haven't looked at the pictures. Juliana took out her phone and looked at the picture. Normal, she said dryly. You can't beat a wedge with a wedge, so why give up the chance to meet someone new? Maybe this one will be okay, she thought, and sighed heavily. Thoughts of Justin had been on her mind all day, and Juliana was angry at herself for being hurt by someone who wasn't worth it. You should have seen yourself from the outside. You had a face like you'd eaten lemons, said Emmeline when she and her sister got home. Steve's pretty normal. I know it's hard to switch quickly, but you don't have to cut him off right away. What am I gonna do? All I can think about is Justin. Juliana sighed heavily. I don't want Steve. I want Justin. You're just used to him. You'll get used to him. You'll see. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow's a big day, Juliana said with a little sigh. Cheer up. Good night. Emmeline replied to her sister. I'll do my best. Juliana went to the bathroom and then plopped down on the bed and closed her eyes. She couldn't get Justin out of her mind. As soon as Juliana stepped into the office, Austin came up to her and handed her a candy bar. Austin, for the millionth time, don't try to hit on me. It's useless, she said, ignoring the gift. I've never seen a woman more stubborn than you, replied the man. It's just a chocolate bar. You can have tea with it. Thank you. But you don't have to give me anything else. She looked at the man sternly. Hello, everyone. Juliana's co-worker and pal Fiona walked into the office and gave the people there a smile. Just ran into the general, and apparently he was walking with our new boss. The woman looked at her watch. In 10 minutes, we're expected in the office. So how's the first impression? Juliana asked immediately. Who knows? Fiona shrugged. He looked normal, young. Austin left the women, and Fiona sat down next to Julianne. I can see he's not giving up. She looked at the candy bar. Water sharpened stone. She said with a smile, it's called obsession. You tell a person no, and he doesn't understand. Julianne replied, a little irritated. He's pushy, persistent. Let's not talk about him. He's really annoying me already. Fiona looked at her watch again. Let's go meet the new chief. It's a shame they took Albert away from us, but let's hope he's okay. Fiona looked at the rest of her co-workers. What are we sitting around for? Everybody out, she said. The whole department went into the office in a friendly crowd. As soon as Julianne saw her new boss, her face changed and she was ready to faint, but she kept on her feet, grabbing Fiona's hand. Why are you so green? She asked, looking surprised at Julianne, who looked as if she'd had the biggest shock of her life. Justin stared intently at Juliana. You could tell by the look in his eyes that he was just as shocked. This is what happens when you know absolutely nothing about a person, Julianne thought. She wasn't prepared for this surprise. Justin struggled to pull himself together and turned his attention to work. After introducing himself to all the employees, he made a short speech about their goals and objectives for the current month and then sent everyone to their seats. It was not easy to work after such a meeting. Julianne had no idea how to work with him in the same office. Her heart was pounding frantically, and her mind was a jumble of different thoughts. What's the matter with you? Fiona asked, looking at her colleague. Have you met our new chief? Why would you think that? Julianne asked, trying to regain her composure and look carefree. You looked at him like that, and he looked at you too, and it was like he was stunned. It was very noticeable, quoted Fiona. You're right. We do know each other. Julianne stared at the computer, not wanting to go into details. You don't want to, don't tell me. With a slightly resentful look, Fiona got to work. Julianne hurried out of the office as soon as the clock struck 6 p.m. Where are you going so fast? I can't keep up with you, Fiona asked, barely catching up with her co-worker. But Julianne didn't say anything. She just picked up the pace. She didn't know why she was trying to escape, why she was afraid of running into him. This was all she needed. She gasped as soon as she stepped outside. Evan was standing right at the entrance with 3 roses. He immediately approached the woman, and Fiona said bye, with a smile on her face, and scurried away. What are you doing here? Juliana asked, walking down the stairs. Evan hurried after her. Regina, let's go sit somewhere and talk, he said, handing her the roses. Julianne stopped and sighed. Evan, why are you doing this? We've already talked. Just as she said those words, she saw Justin walking out of the office. She immediately picked up the flowers, and a smile suddenly formed on her face, and she looked at Evan, pretending not to see Justin. Only fools step on the same rake a second time. She continued, smiling sweetly. Julianne could see that Justin was squinting at her and Evan, and it seemed to her that he was uncomfortable seeing her with another man, or at least he was frowning. Julianne really wanted to think he was jealous of her. Regina, sometimes people should be given second chances and a chance to make up for mistakes, Evan insisted. You were the one who wanted to break up, trading me for someone else. Those aren't mistakes, she replied. Evan, I don't love you anymore. Don't come back. Julianne watched Justin's car drive away and walked toward the bus stop, handing the flowers back to Evan. Let me at least give you a ride, he shouted after her. Don't, she shouted back without turning around. She'd already turned the page, and she didn't want to see that man again. Julianne didn't notice a familiar car coming around the corner. Coming to a stop, the car stopped. Justin opened the front door. Get in, he said to Julianne, who was stunned. Surprise mixed with a sense of joy. She got into the car without thinking, trying to keep her heart from pounding frantically in her chest. It's a small world, Justin said as they pulled away from the stop. Yeah, Julianne replied, trying to hide the excitement she felt. Justin, did you decide to drive me home? She asked afterward. No, he said. Where to then? She looked out the window, noticing that they were taking a completely different road from the one leading to her house. You'll see. You said you wanted another relationship. I've been thinking about it. Tonight, and we'll see. He looked at Julianne for a second, and she noticed the man was slightly tense. You're speaking in riddles. I don't understand what there is to see, she said, a little confused. You'll see, he said, turning toward the pie yard. Let's get some pie. He continued, pulling into the parking lot. After buying the pie, they got back into the car. After driving just 5 minutes to the yard of the house next door to Pie Court, Justin parked in one of the front doors, and Julianne immediately guessed that he had brought her to his house. Let's go, he said as soon as they got out of the car. Julianne followed him, but not to the front door, but to the playground. A little girl of about 3 smiled broadly and climbed down from the swings on which an older woman was swinging her. Daddy, Daddy. She ran toward Justin, and Julianne stood frozen in one place, eyes fluttering in amazement. Justin picked the girl up in his arms, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. How's my bunny doing? He asked. Good. Grandma and I have been waiting for you here, she answered and looked at Julianne. Daddy, who is that? She asked. Justin turned to face Juliana and set his daughter on the ground. That's our guest. Call Grandma. Let's go home for tea and cake, replied he to his daughter. The girl approached Juliana, and she squatted down and smiled. My name is Juliana, and you? She asked. Veronica, the girl answered, and immediately ran back to the playground. Justin looked intently at Juliana. My mom lives with us, helping me with Veronica, he said. You have a very sweet daughter, Julianne said with a smile. A minute later, Veronica came to them again, accompanied by her grandmother. The woman smiled good-naturedly at Julianne. Hello, I'm Justin's mom, she said. Hello. Julianne, a little embarrassed, she said. Daddy, what kind of pie did you get? Veronica asked, looking at the box he was holding. Your favorite, Cherry, he answered, and everyone headed for the house. As they drank tea and talked casually at the table, Justin watched Julianne intently, and she felt as if he were trying to read her mind, and she sensed that he was still tense. Would you like to see my dollhouse? Veronica asked and looked at Julianne. Of course I do, she said, still smiling. Then let's go. The little girl got off the chair and took Julianne's hand and led her to her room. Good woman, said Georgia to her son. Are you seeing her? You could say that, he answered his mother. Justin, I think she and Veronica will get along. Julianne's nothing like that Caroline of yours. The woman cringed a little at the mention of her son's ex. That Caroline had seemed white and fluffy. But it turned out that a man with a child was a burden to her. Her dreams of dumping Veronica on her grandmother had failed, and in the end, Justin had parted with her without a drop of regret. Julianne walked into Veronica's room and immediately saw a large dollhouse with all kinds of furniture. Wow, she replied, looking at it and thinking that she would play in such a lovely thing herself. Do you like it? Veronica asked. Very much, she answered. Will you play with me? Sure. Sure. Justin walked into his daughter's room and smiled as he watched her and Julianne playing together. Can I join you? He asked. Sure, Daddy, Veronica replied. And Julianne said that she really liked my toys and she didn't have any as a child. Juliana felt happy. As the three of them played and laughed happily, she suddenly felt like they were a family. And she felt warm at the thought. She liked Justin's mom, too, not to mention the adorable little girl with 2 ponytails sitting next to her. She was also finally convinced that Justin cared about her, wondering if he probably thought that having a daughter would push Julianne away and she wouldn't want to have another relationship with him. As they played, they lost track of time a little. But Georgia reminded them that it was past Veronica's bedtime. Here we go, she said, pouting her lips. We'll definitely play again later, said Justin, kissing the girl on the cheek. Julianne, Will you come to visit us again? Veronica asked, looking at the guest. If you invite me, I will definitely come, she answered. I will. We'll play with my other toys. I have a lot of them. Right, Daddy? She looked at Justin. We will. Now it's time for the good girl to wash up and go to bed, he replied. Before going to wash up and go to bed, Veronica hugged her father. Good night, Daddy, she said, and walked over to Juliana, and she almost cried when the little girl hugged her too. Such a sweet and affectionate little girl, she thought. Good night, Juliana, she said, and went into the bath with her grandmother. So cute, Juliana said to Justin, wiping a tear from her cheek, which she still couldn't hold back, being touched by what was happening. Justin smiled contentedly. Come on, I'll take you home, he said. Come on. Juliana replied. She was overwhelmed with joy that Justin had introduced her to his family, let her into his world, which until now had been a mystery to her. Are you going home? Juliana asked Justin when they stopped outside her front door. I can stay at your place, he said. If you don't mind. I don't mind, Juliana said with a smile. Emmeline wasn't home. They went into the kitchen and Juliana put the kettle on. Justin, I'm really glad you introduced me to your mother and daughter, she said, looking at the man. And you still want another relationship? He asked, looking at her intently. Of course I do. Do you really think that having a child with you can affect my feeling for you? Especially since Veronica is so cute. Juliana asked sincerely, and Justin smiled. A lot of people are put off by that. And what are your feelings for me? Continuing to smile, he asked. Juliana was a little embarrassed. I love you, and I want to be with you. And Veronica doesn't scare me away at all, on the contrary. She admitted, honestly. The kettle boiled and Juliana got up to get the glasses and pour the tea. Justin got up from his seat and walked over to her. I want a different relationship with you too, he said, and hugged the woman. Do you love me? She asked, looking into his eyes. Of course I do, he answered. If he didn't love her, he wouldn't have wanted anything. And certainly he wouldn't have introduced me to his mother and Veronica. Let's sit down, I want to tell you something else. He sat down on a chair, pulling Juliana onto his lap. Veronica isn't my daughter, she's my niece, he began. My sister died after giving birth. Daddy ran away when Karen was still pregnant, and after she died, he didn't want his daughter. Wrote a waiver. I went straight to adoption. Wanted the girl to have a father if she didn't have a mom. Veronica doesn't know that. Of course, for her, I'm her birth father, and for me, she's my own daughter. Juliana looked at Justin with surprise and sadness. That's how it is, she thought, having received such unexpected information. Veronica looked a little like Justin, so there was no doubt that she was related to him. She must miss her mom. Juliana sighed, imagining how hard it must be for a little girl like that to be without a mom, especially when everyone around her has one. Of course she does. But not every woman is able to love and accept someone else's child. My past relationships are a very good example of that, he said sadly. I could do it, Juliana replied and smiled, and Justin kissed her immediately. They had a glass of tea and went to their room. I love you even more now, she said, hugging the man. Shall we go to my place after work tomorrow? He asked, pulling her close to him. If the new boss does not load to the full, then we will go. Smiling, she answered. He won't. He is quite adequate and will spare the woman he loves. Justin laughed and immediately began kissing Juliana, slowly releasing her from her clothes. They drove to work together and Juliana was glowing with happiness. Well, well, well. Fiona looked at her co-worker. I don't recognize you, she remarked. It was clearly not without a man. Did you and Evan get back together? No, of course not, Juliana replied. What was is gone. Then who? Come on, tell me. The woman took her seat and stared expectantly at her colleague. Completely different man. Let's get to work. she replied. Of course, soon everyone would know about her and Justin, but for now, she didn't want to talk about it. Austin entered the office and walked past the women, barely saying hello, and Julianne breathed a sigh of relief, hoping that he had finally realized that his advances were futile and that he would leave her alone. Justin was already waiting in the car when Julianne left the office. They decided it was better to leave the workplace separately so that rumors wouldn't spread. "Let's stop at the baby store on the way," she said. "Why?" Justin asked, pulling out of the parking lot. "I want to buy Veronica a present." The man smiled. "She already has a room full of toys," he replied. "So what? When they go to visit children, they always bring something. So let's go, and tell me what she likes." "Let's go." I promised I'd get her a Puppy Patrol set, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. After some thought, Justin said, "Then I'll buy it," Julianne replied happily. When they arrived at Justin's house, Veronica was walking on the playground with her grandmother, just like yesterday. When she saw them, she immediately ran toward them. "Daddy, it's so great that Juliana came to us again," she said as she hugged Justin and then walked over to Julianne, who squatted down and opened her arms. Veronica hugged the woman and smiled. "Are we all going to play together again tonight?" she asked. "Of course we will. I also have a present for you." Julianne took out a box with a set of puppies from the cartoon Puppy Patrol. "I've wanted them for so long," the girl exclaimed happily. "Grandma, look." She immediately showed the set to Georgia. "How wonderful," she said. She looked at Julianne with a smile and immediately turned to her son. "Justin, Grandma called. Grandpa's blood pressure is off the charts again. I'll go to them. Take Veronica to daycare tomorrow, okay?" "Sure, Mom. Go. I can pick her up myself. Be sure to call me later to let me know how Grandpa's doing." After saying goodbye to everyone, Georgia left and the three of them went to Justin's house. After dinner, they played with their new toys together, and again the time flew by very quickly, and it was time to put Veronica to bed. "Grandma wasn't home," Veronica said. "She usually gives me a bath before I go to bed." "I can give you a bath if you don't mind," Julianne answered. "That's great. I have toys in my bathtub too." Veronica took Julianne's hand and led her into the bathroom. Justin filled the tub with water. "Just don't stay in here too long," he said, smiling, and stepped out, leaving the two of them alone. Veronica dumped all her bath toys out of the small red basin into the water and, laughing, splashed Julianne a little. "You little bully," she laughed, wiping the water off her face. Julianne didn't have much experience with children, but she really enjoyed messing around with this little girl. After playing with Veronica in the bathtub for a while, she washed the girl and then wiped her dry, wrapped her in a towel, and brought her into the room where Justin was waiting for them. "And the story?" Veronica asked when she was put to bed. "I'll read it now," said Justin, picking up the storybook. The girl looked at the woman with a smile, and Justin handed the book to Juliana, who began to read a fairy tale about a little house. Justin looked at her and at Veronica, thinking that this time he had not made a mistake in choosing a woman, and Juliana would be a wonderful mother and wife. Julianne had no sooner finished reading the story than Veronica fell asleep, and she and Justin left her room. "Will you stay at my place?" he asked, putting his arm around the woman, and Juliana nodded in agreement. "Are you going to live with us now?" Veronica asked Julianne as they ate breakfast together in the kitchen. She looked at Justin, feeling a little awkward. "I hope so." Justin answered with a smile as he looked at Julianne. "Are you going to be my mom now?" Veronica asked her again. "I would like that," Julianne answered. "Wouldn't you?" She smiled at the girl, thinking that she would really like that. "Me too. Daddy says I'm going to have a mom, but I don't have one," she replied. "Daddy was right. I do now. Let me braid your pigtails for you." Julianne looked at Justin. "Do you have any rubber bands for your hair?" she asked him. "I'll get some." The man got up from the table and went into the room. "Are you and Daddy picking me up from daycare together today?" the girl asked, smiling at Juliana. "I think we will do everything together now, and I have long dreamed of such a pretty daughter like you." Juliana stroked the girl's cheek. She and Justin took Veronica to the garden and then drove to work. In the evening, they picked her up and went home to Justin's house again. "Will you move in with me?" Justin asked Juliana as they cuddled together and went to bed. "Yes," she answered, pressing herself against him. "Will you marry me?" he asked. And Juliana raised her head and looked fondly into his eyes. "Of course I will," she answered, and kissed him on the lips. The next day after work, they went to Juliana's house to pick up her things. Emmeline was at home. Seeing her sister with Justin surprised her. They hadn't seen each other for the past few days. Emmeline had been having an affair with Paul and hadn't been home. And neither had Juliana, who didn't know that her sister's life had changed because she hadn't said anything at all on the phone. "Hi." "Hi," she said, looking at her sister in a somewhat judgmental way. "We're just getting our stuff?" Juliana answered. "What kind of stuff?" Emmeline asked, not hiding her surprise. "I'm moving in with Justin." Juliana said with a smile. "That's news. You're not getting married by any chance?" she asked. "We are," Justin answered and smiled broadly. "Wow. Well, I'm happy for you." Emmeline was a little embarrassed to hear that. Who would have thought that her sister and Justin's relationship would take such a turn for the worse? She hadn't expected it, but she was happy for her sister. Juliana went to live with Justin, and a couple months later they were married. Georgia moved out on them, deciding that her son and his wife and Veronica should live separately. Justin and Juliana persuaded her to stay because she did not interfere with them at all. But the woman was adamant in her decision, promising that she would visit them and periodically pick up Veronica from kindergarten. When Juliana's apartment was completed, they decided to rent it out and also bought a small cottage, where Georgia immediately began to plant everything that could grow. "Mom, when is he going to be born?" Veronica asked Juliana, looking at her still small belly. "It's not very soon," she answered, putting dinner on the plates. "We don't even know if it's a boy or a girl yet." "I think it will be a boy," said Veronica. "And why do you think so?" Justin asked her. "Because I'm a girl. So now we need a boy." With a serious look, replied Veronica. Juliana lightly ruffled the girl's hair and smiled at her husband. "Here, enjoy your meal, little mouse." The woman put a plate in front of Veronica, which contained her favorite mashed potatoes with a cutlet. "Delicious," she replied and began to eat the contents of the plate. Juliana sat down at the table and smiled as she watched her husband and daughter devour the dinner she had prepared. How happy she was that her dream had come true. She has a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and in half a year there will be one more baby in their family. Veronica quickly began to call her mom, because the baby for a very long time lacked a mother, and Juliana sincerely loved her and became for her the real mom. In their family reigned peace and harmony. Because each of its members was happy and loved, there is no love without commitment. After all, when there is love, there is a desire to let your soul mate into your world, to share joy and sadness, ups and downs, and obligations are not burdensome when there is love, because caring for loved ones brings joy. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.